Hi, I want to talk about financial criminals that go outside of their own jurisdiction or their own country, and they commit large scale criminality in other countries. Then when you want to catch up with them, it's very difficult because they're behind the borders of United States or Israel or Saudi Arabia. Or with the Saudis, it's not as hard, but with Israel, that's a fortified area, and the Americans. Well, I want to talk about Mr. Mnuchin, the American Treasury Secretary, and before I go there, there is a part of the U.S. Treasury that they call Exchange Stabilization Board that has a lot of money or access to a lot of money that Federal Reserve can print for them, and their job is to keep the value of the dollar stable or good in relationship to other currencies, to Canadian dollar or to sterling. And one of the things that they do is suppress the prices of precious metals. And I guess a lot of old-fashioned economists, they look at this ratio, and it's important. It shows the strength of the dollar. Well, there are other indexes too. Dollar index that shows the strength of dollar with relative to other commodities or oil or other currencies. But they issue a lot of derivatives to suppress the price of gold or silver, and they also buy or sell currencies of other countries that are stupid enough to let them do it. But then in exchange for all this hidden criminality, they are free to issue an unlimited amount of dollars, and then they use that dollars to go hire armies or hire ISIS, and cause more problems, because once this ratio is fixated, then they have a certain value internationally for the dollar. They can use it to publish unlimited amount of money. But they are very indebted. But what happens is that there are some investors either in China or Russia that they buy, they don't like the dollars or the US bonds, and they come around and they're very persistent. They don't want to get for their bonds or a 10-year bond that they have, they don't want dollars, they don't want another crappy currency, they don't want somebody printing more of the same for them, and they will insist on gold or other valuable commodities. And so there is like a push from the bottom, and US, I don't know how they are supplying or keeping the foreign holders of these bonds quiet, but at times I think they run low and they try to get more gold. And lately, in the last few years, they have been trying to just outright steal it from foreign central banks. Well, I think that the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan or other countries, Libya, I don't know what happened to Libya's central bank gold or Iraq's central bank gold. They hoard these gold, they steal them very forcefully or overthrow foreign government, and then take this gold and hold it for a time as reserve until gradually these persistent buyers come around and they have no other choice to sell some in a small fashion to keep the price of the dollar stable. So, well, the latest two episodes, I think Mnuchin was talking about getting hold of Venezuela's central bank gold, and the Venezuelans had 20 tons, so they asked the Russian government to safeguard it. So the Russian planes shipped them out to Russia, and so it got out of the hand that the Americans could get to. But then Bolton came out and said, "Oh, we want Venezuela's oil now," and I don't know where that went, but things were heating up, and then they cooled off. Then they went and made a deal with the ISIS, and they stole or shipped out of Syria 50 tons of the Syrian people's gold. And then I was calculating the amount, the dollar amount of this gold. I think I might have made a mistake on the calculation. It came out to $2.1 billion. Kind of looks small. Well, at $42 a gram for gold, that's 42 multiplied by 1,000 gram. That's $42,000 for a kilo, I think. And then 42 multiplied by 50 kilos is about $2.1 million, and then multiply that by 1,000 would be 2.1 billion, which sounds kind of small, but then comparing this amount of money to all the monies that the U.S. government, the Federal Reserve has printed and have used in all these wars, it looks like a small repayment for stupid things that are done in foreign countries. But I think at some point in the future, the Syrian government, once it completely gets hold of everything else that's going on, should apply to ICC or to UN and ask for this gold back or ask for the money back. But that's not the point I'm trying to get at. Comparing the amount of people that have gotten killed over the money, well, 2.1 billion would be a lot of money for me personally. But in the scheme of things, in the greater scheme of things, 2.1 billion is chump change. For example, the wall, Mexico-American wall, would be like 6 billion, which is 3 times bigger the amount. But the criminality of the U.S., Israeli, and Wahhabi individuals or financiers, even though it's a petty in the international scene, it creates a lot of animosity and in fact, many countries might go to war, well, over this stuff, because maybe the government officials or people think that, hey, this is a lot of money, where did it go? But I want to bring to another incident that, well, somebody in the Emirat or Saudi financed somebody else, and they send in terrorists, and they killed, or suicide bomber killed like 27 Iranian border guards. So the whole country is up in arms, and there were very many pissed people in the eulogy. So what I'm saying is, in the greater scheme of things, like it's not a war, not a full-scale war. It's like in comparison to Iran-Iraq war, 600,000 Iranian soldiers died, and the Iraqis 400,000 died. And in the invasion of Iraq, a million Iraqis died. I don't know how many their service people died, like in military, but in this comparison, these numbers, they're very much mismatched. But what I'm saying is this group of criminal bankers or financiers that the Americans or Israelis or the Wahhabis have, they go after these caches of gold, or they have a personal vendetta that few people have to get killed. For them doing this, then they induce entire countries that might go to war, like Iran might attack Pakistan itself, like maybe a million soldiers will die in the war. But these behaviors of these criminals is because it's like a chemical reaction that some chemical reaction is going in, but when you add a little radical to this chemical reaction, it just whoop, the whole thing explodes or becomes on fire. Well, then that brings us to another issue, that many countries should have some kind of legal and framework or criminal procedure to catch up with these people, to Steve Mnuchin or Bolton or Israeli criminals that cross borders or help ISIS shift 50 tons of gold, or Wahhabis. They should have some kind of mechanism that can also go beyond just one border, or instead of going into World War III, we just kill these certain individuals or catch up with them and eliminate them, rather than entire countries go to war. And I think that the framework exists in many countries, and also there is many countries, Iran itself, Russia, they have a lot of cyber force to totally identify who these people are, like who are the Wahhabis that wrote the check to hire somebody to go kill the Iranian guard. Well, that's a very valuable information, and also frameworks to catch up with these individuals or his buddies, either kill them at sight or transport them to mainland, kill them here. So instead of like an entire country of Saudi Arabia getting bombed, then we just catch up with these. Well, I think that many countries can do this. Well, I was very impressed that 50 countries came out in support of Venezuela, because at least 50 countries in the world, which is almost a fourth or a third of the number of the countries in the world, they know that, hey, we have this problem. Venezuela is not special, or Syria is not special, or we could be next. When Steve Mnuchin or Bolton, they're desperate. They know that the value of the dollar is going to collapse, and they need to steal more central bank gold. So I think that they should make this effort overtly, or all sign up with the ICC and have these legal criminal proceedings to be initiated against people like Mnuchin. And then once there is international criminal court or an international body has that decree and has a judgment, it might even be in absentia, then the next step would be to apprehend these individuals, and this can be done by signing mutual extradition agreements. Uh, for example, they could institute one country that's very difficult for Americans to upend, like Russia or China or Iran, to be the holding place where these people will be sent to be exterminated, because they're a threat to all of humanity, and they're a threat to financial well-being of the planet. Uh, I don't think that doing so is immoral or illegal in any way. Uh, the, just because there are borders that these guys can go hide behind doesn't mean that there aren't other mechanisms to go beyond these safe havens. Oh, well, uh, my prayer is that these Zionists and these Wahhabis and these American financiers, they get caught and they get sentenced to death. And they cause a lot of problems, but their value of their losses has not been significant. So the countries, they kind of delay, or they don't want to deal with it. But at some point, instead of going to World War III, it might be a lot cheaper to deal with these pockets of criminals. Well, thank you very much for being in my YouTube channel. Please subscribe.